No one should be surprised there's been yet another anti-Semitic attack, this time the torching of a car in Sydney plus damage to several others, accompanied by Death to Israel slogans, they can't even spell, painted across nearby walls. Now this is exactly what happens when there's a limp response to sustained anti-Semitic outrages, racist, hate speak outrages that are not immediately and vigorously responded to. Ever since the October 7 atrocity, the Albanese government's watered down its call for an end to anti-Semitism with denunciations of an all but non-existent Islamophobia. That's because Labor can't work out whether to defend people, innocent people, under savage and unprovoked attacks or to appease Islamist sentiment in some of its own electorates. In sharp contrast to the weakness of his federal counterpart, the New South Wales Premier Chris Minns, a Labor man of course, well, he's got no trouble calling out this Sydney attack for what it is without equivocation.
I think that we would be unnecessarily splitting hairs now if we suggested this was not anti-Semitic, and I think doing a disservice to our other responsibility here and standing up unambiguously to these forms of racism and violence. If we start splitting hairs this morning, and I fronted a press conference where I said, oh, look, I'm not sure whether this was anti-Semitic, when blind Freddie can see that it was, I think that would send the exact opposite message that this press conference is meant to convey.
Imagine a crowd had gathered around the Opera House, as happened last year on October 9, screaming abuse at Aboriginal people instead of Jewish people. Now, does anyone think there would not have been an instant and overwhelming official response? Yet still, almost 14 months on, we've seen the steady escalation of anti-Jewish pogroms. That's what these are, and hardly anyone's been arrested, charged, prosecuted, deported or jailed because the left establishment reckons that one race that racism doesn't apply to are the Jews. Now, racism is racism is racism. Hate speech is hate speech. And it's an evil double standard here. It's shameful, it's contemptible, yet it exactly fits the Albanese government's muted response to 14 months of escalating anti-Semitism. Today, after the Sydney attack, and perhaps still smarting over criticism for playing tennis on the weekend rather than visiting the site of the Melbourne synagogue attack, the Prime Minister visited Sydney's Jewish Museum with all the cameras rolling. Now, if this visit was already in his diary, fair enough. But it looks to me that it was just staged for the media, for pictures to try and save his reputation. If that's the case, then Jewish Australians are being used. A large part of the crisis now enveloping the Albanese government lies at the feet of the Foreign Minister Penny Wong and her obsession with campaigning against Israel at the United Nations. Now, is the PM signing off on these attacks or too weak to rein Wong in? Are these radically new positions even taken to Cabinet? And if not, why not? And where's the pushback too from other frontbenchers who I know say very privately to Jewish organisations and groups that they don't agree with this UN position? Now, weak PM, muzzled by colleagues, is no way to run a country. Wong's anti-Israel activism is relentless and it lacks sense. Israel has a right to defend itself after it was attacked by terrorists. It's not Israel's fault that innocent people die when their terror masters use them as human shields, especially as Israel's more careful than about almost any other country to avoid civilian casualties. Civilian deaths, as regrettable as they are the fault of the terrorists. Yet this week, Wong has bracketed Israel with Russia and China in her official Bob Hawke lecture, as if a decent liberal democracy can ever be put in the same category as brutal dictatorships. Bob Hawke, the great Labor leader who said, if the bell tolls for Israel, it tolls for all mankind. What we wouldn't give for another Bob Hawke Labor figure right now.